The City of Port St. Lucie's Office of Emergency Management, along with the St. Lucie County Division of Emergency Management, plays a vital role as a direct link to residents and businesses. The city's emergency management office's guiding principles adhere to the national standard which structures emergency management at all levels in 4 phases: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We are responsible for developing the framework to reduce community vulnerability to hazards and cope with natural disasters. We wanted to take a moment to navigate through the official Preparedness, Response, Recovery website for the City of Port St. Lucie at www.cityofpsl.com/em. This landing page houses up-to-date information about COVID-19 vaccine clinics, hurricanes and storms, shelters and evacuation routes, plus emergency contact phone numbers. By clicking here, you can find some useful information and guides to help you prepare for and recover from a hurricane. Get important safety information before, during, and after a storm, and tips for pets during an emergency. As you brush up on your hurricane knowledge, let's find your nearest shelter by clicking here. Evacuation and sheltering is a county function supported by the city, and not all shelters are open for every storm. There are 2 evacuation zones in St. Lucie County. Zone A is along the water and would typically be the first zone considered for evacuation. Depending on the storm scenario and surge expectations, Zone B would be next. There are 4 types of shelter in St. Lucie County. All hurricane evacuation shelters meet current American Red Cross design standards to withstand hurricane force winds, including window strength and protection, wind and debris exposure, and storm surge inundation. A hurricane evacuation shelter is a refuge of last resort, a place to go if you can't stay at home or with a relative, friend, or coworker, or at a nearby hotel. Here is a section where there are several guides and several examples of a family emergency plan. Also, there is a list of ways to stay informed. We are constantly updating our website with new information, so please check back often. A new flood awareness landing page is coming soon. Now we will hear from Melissa Eunice with more from our 2021 Virtual Hurricane Expo.
Hurricane season is here, and it runs through November 30th with expected average storm activity. The City of Port St. Lucie wants you to become storm savvy and debunk any common myths and provide you with the facts so our city can be better prepared. It only takes one storm to change your life in our community. Here are a few steps to prepare yourself and your loved ones from the dangerous weather. Make an emergency plan. Your family may not be together if a disaster strikes, so it's important to know how you'll contact one another and reconnect if separated. Establish a family meeting place that's familiar and easy to find. On the city's website, cityofpsl.com/hurricane, there are templates and examples of an emergency plan. Know your evacuation zone. You may have to evacuate quickly due to a hurricane, so take the time now to identify your evacuation routes. Practice leaving with your household and pets, then identify locations where you will stay. Recognize severe weather. To help us recognize severe weather, 3 local meteorologists will share their knowledge about how a storm works, how residents can be better prepared, and what kind of damage all of us can expect from a storm. Joining us will be WPBF Channel 25 First Warning Weather Expert Mike Lyons, WPEC Channel 12 Emmy Award-winning Chief Meteorologist Titus Reed, WPTV Channel 5 Chief Meteorologist Steve Weigel.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Lyons from WPBF 25 News here in our brand spanking new First Warning Weather Center. Happy to spend a few minutes with you tonight to talk about the 2021 hurricane season. Shout out to the great folks, the City of Port St. Lucie. See, we're representing here tonight. Thanks again for inviting me. Quite a privilege, quite an honor to share some time with you tonight. I was hoping we could do this in person, definitely next year. And definitely next year when we all get together in Port St. Lucie, let's hope we're talking about a very quiet 2021 hurricane season, because last year, as you know, was off the charts crazy. We ended up with 30 storms. It was the most active hurricane season in recorded history. We had 10 storms that actually made landfall, 7 major hurricanes, and incredibly, all of them missed Florida. We had Ada, that weak system that was in the Keys in November, made a second landfall just north of Tampa. I'll show that to you in a couple minutes. But what are the odds? I checked on that late in the hurricane season, talked to Dr. Phil Klotzbach. He's a hurricane expert at Colorado State University. And I said, Phil, we've had 28 storms at that point. And I said, what are the odds that none of them would hit Florida? And he said, less than 1%. So, ladies and gentlemen, you beat the odds last year. Let's hope we beat the odds this year as we embark on another hurricane season. Let's begin, though, with a look back at a little hurricane history. And here we go. Take a look at this. This is Hurricane Dorian. Remember this storm? This was 2019. Look at this incredible storm coming right at Florida, right toward the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast. Then, incredibly, it stopped, sat there in the Bahamas for 2 days, and miraculously started to move to the north. This was one for the ages, one of the most incredible storms, and the fact that somehow it missed Florida. Boy, we are just so lucky, especially when you look at some of the numbers associated with the storm. The slowest moving storm over a 24-hour period. It essentially was stuck. It didn't move for a good 24 hours, devastating the Bahamas. It made 6 different landfalls, 5 in the Bahamas alone. The accumulated cyclone energy, ACE as we call it, that's an all-time record for one storm. Pressure, that's lower than Hurricane Andrew. Winds, incredible, 185 miles per hour, and for 15 days, it was an active tropical system. The year before, it was Michael on the other coast, moving toward Mexico Beach, Category 5. This storm was incredible. I was up in Mexico Beach about 6 months after the storm hit. It was complete devastation. Where houses used to be slabs because the storm surge from that storm was just so incredible. By the way, 4 Cat 5s have made landfall in the United States. 3 hit Florida, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Andrew, 1992, and a hurricane that hit the Keys back in Labor Day of 1935. The other Category 5, that was a hurricane called Camille back in 1969. It hit in Mississippi. So let's talk about last year, because last year, as I said, was incredible. These are all the storms that made landfall last year. And you can see Mother Nature certainly picking on the Gulf Coast with a couple of major hurricanes. We were so lucky. Yeah, we had that threat from Isaias earlier in the season, but this is Ada, a weak tropical storm. That's Ada's second landfall. I mean, when you put it all together, how lucky were we last year that we did not have issues with all those storms that were out in the tropical Atlantic. All right, button is not working. Let's try it that way. Here's a look at some of the winds that we saw last year. And again, they were amazing. 150 miles per hour. Remember Isaias, that's the one that got our attention. Early in the hurricane season, it ended up making landfall. Winds right around 85 miles per hour from that system as well. So what do we think about the upcoming hurricane season? Every hurricane forecast, and there's about 24 of them, every hurricane forecast except one expects a busy hurricane season. And this is the one we kind of defer to from Colorado State University. 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes likely in the tropical Atlantic. Hurricane season, of course, begins on June 1st, runs for 6 long months. The peak of the season is August, September, and early October. This year looks to be active. Warm sea surface temperatures, pressures relatively low where hurricanes develop, and no El Nino in the equatorial Pacific. So again, this year, we need to be on guard. Last year, as I pointed out, incredibly lucky in Port St. Lucie and all of the Treasure Coast. But this year, all it really takes is one storm right here, and you're dealing with problems. So what do you need to do? Number one, you need to develop a family plan, especially if you're new to Port St. Lucie County, and South Florida. Talk to some of your neighbors because they've all probably gone through tropical storms or hurricanes. We've had so many threats over the past couple of years. Determine if you live in an evacuation zone. If you do, where are you going to go? You don't have to go too far. Just get out of the evacuation zone, but make those plans. Now, a good resource is our website, WPBF.com. Another great resource, the St. Lucie County Office of Emergency Management and the City of Port St. Lucie. The bottom line is take a few minutes now. Prepare for the storm. You'll have plenty of notice. We'll be tracking the storm for days. So you need to take a few minutes now and prepare. Like I said, hopefully next year we'll get together. We'll all talk about a quiet 2021 hurricane season. Until then, I'll see you on TV.
The 2020 Atlantic hurricane season was one for the record books. I'm Chief Meteorologist Titus Reed, part of the CBS 12 Storm Track Weather Team. We saw a record-setting 30 named storms last year, including 14 hurricanes, 6 of which became major Category 3 strength or higher. And while no two seasons are ever alike, this year may be another above-average season for the Atlantic Basin. That's due to a number of factors what forecasters look at to create the seasonal forecast. From a warmer than average central Atlantic so far this year to the continuing trends of more intense, large and slow storms. But one of the biggest factors is the absence of a developing El Nino. It's a recurring climate pattern that sets up across the tropical Pacific, leading to decreased tropical activity in the Atlantic. According to the latest ENSO forecast from the Climate Prediction Center, our current La Nina climate is expected to give way to neutral conditions later this summer. As we near the peak of hurricane season, the odds of neutral conditions continuing or a return to La Nina are roughly the same. Regardless, El Nino is not likely to develop this year. And that brings us to our first myth, that neutral seasons mean a less active Atlantic hurricane season. While it is true that neutral seasons do trend to bring less major hurricane activity than La Nina seasons, it is not entirely true that the season itself is not active. In fact, mapping out all of our major hurricanes from 1990 to 2020, we see that there have been several neutral seasons since 1997 that have produced roughly the same major hurricane activity as La Nina years. Neutral conditions say nothing about how active a season may or may not be. It simply says that the global climate pattern isn't giving us a strong signal about how the wind shear across the Atlantic may shape up over time. Typically, wind shear with La Nina years is reduced, hence why we see more major hurricanes on average in La Nina periods. That's those of El Nino years, where wind shear is heightened over the Atlantic basin. And even then, these global climate patterns don't say where any storms that may form will go. It's for that reason we always need to be prepared. And this year, every Floridian should listen to that message. Thanks to the new hurricane research by Colorado State University, we're now able to predict the odds of at least one tropical event occurring within 50 miles of the state of Florida this season. And the odds this year are high. According to this year's forecast from CSU, Florida has a 96% chance of seeing a named storm come within 50 miles of the state. A 75% chance of that system being a hurricane, and a 41% chance of that storm being a major hurricane of Category 3 strength or higher. And if you're wondering how this is possible, forecasters are comparing the current state of the atmosphere to the seasons past that have had similar look and feel to what we are experiencing right now. They're able to look at the past storms that occurred in those similar years and compute percentage odds for this upcoming season. It's a delicate matching game that can yield rather accurate results. But what about the odds of a system making a direct landfall right here in St. Lucie County? CSU has provided those odds too. And this year, St. Lucie County has a 53% chance of seeing some sort of landfalling tropical system in the county. That's higher than the 38% chance we normally have dating back to 1850. Of course, we can still feel impacts from storms that don't make a direct landfall in our county. The odds continue to increase the farther south you go. Palm Beach County, just to our south, has a 60% chance of seeing a landfalling tropical system this year, which would certainly bring impacts our way as well. With numbers this high, it's important all residents of St. Lucie County prepare for this upcoming season, regardless of what it brings. One thing you should know is if you live in an evacuation zone, you can find this information out very easily by going to floridadisaster.org. There you can determine if you reside in an evacuation zone and your local evacuation routes. And that brings us to our third and final myth, that if evacuation orders are given, everyone needs to leave. But that's not entirely true. Evacuation orders and evacuation zones are created to evacuate those most vulnerable to the #1 killer in a landfalling tropical system, storm surge. For St. Lucie County residents, those on the barrier islands, including Hutchinson Island, those near Jensen Beach, or those east of US 1 north of Fort Pierce, are considered to be in an evacuation zone and should heed orders. If you live close to I-95 or west of the I-95 corridor, you don't live in an evacuation zone, and evacuating ahead of a storm will be a personal decision. Storm surge is the biggest threat to life in landfalling tropical systems. It can inundate buildings, cover roadways, and put human lives at risk. That's why when evacuation orders are given, for those of you who live in an evacuation zone, you should always heed those orders. So what else can we do as we get ready for this season? Well, you can create a hurricane kit. CBS12.com has a list of supplies you'll want to include in your hurricane kit, including health supplies, to continue to stay healthy during this coronavirus pandemic. Check on those evacuation routes, and as previously discussed, know if you live in an evacuation zone and perform an insurance checkup. Know what your homeowner's policy does and does not cover. If renting, make sure your renter's insurance is up to date for the estimated cost of your belongings. And always keep your documentation with you. A lot of insurance policy information is available online now, but after a storm, it may be difficult to connect to the internet and have running power. It's always a good idea to have a physical copy on hand or in a safe box. Finally, consider flood insurance. Remember, that's a separate policy. See if you live in a flood-prone area and consider purchasing ahead of the season. Most new policies take effect a month later, so don't leave an insurance checkup until the last minute. If a storm is threatening in a few days, it's already too late to do anything. Hopefully this has helped bust a few myths while also bringing helpful information to the residents of St. Lucie County. Your CBS 12 Storm Track weather team will be with you every step of the way, from the first storm to the last this season.
Hi everyone, I'm First Alert Chief Meteorologist Steve Weagle from WPTV. We're going to talk about hurricanes in the 2021 hurricane season, and the title of this one, Hurricane Miss. And we still see a lot of people these days that do things to prepare for hurricanes and during hurricanes that you really shouldn't do, and it puts your safety in jeopardy. So we want to talk about that and going to give you an update on what's expected this year for hurricane season overall. Now, hurricane season runs from June 1st through November 30th, and the peak of the season would be September 10th. Now, typically in June and July, there's not much going on for hurricane season. Things start to really get going about mid-August, and we do a sharp climb up towards September 10th. That's kind of the peak day. It's a peak day in the Atlantic Ocean, but it's not really the peak day for South Florida because we actually get more hurricane landfalls historically in the month of October than we do in September. But that is the day that the activity peaks in the entire Atlantic basin, and then it subsides after that, although there's a secondary peak that is around mid-October, and that's when we see some storms kind of bump up as we get into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean mid and late October. Those late season storms that sneak in. All right, as far as the names for this year, of course, it's in alphabetical order, male, female. And we get into the Greek alphabet last year. Hopefully we won't do it this year. We have, there's the tracks for 2020, and it was a busy season, obviously. and of course into the Greek alphabet. That's only the second time that's happened. The other year was 2005, the year we had Hurricane Wilma. Of course, historically, we've had some significant hurricanes that have come close or hit us. Francis and Jean in 2004, Wilma in 05. Dorian was a massive scare for us. Dorian just pummeled the Bahamas through Grand Bahama, stalled, and then lifted north along the coastline. Never made a direct impact here, but we certainly felt some of the effects from it. And there's Irma. The list goes on and on. So we have to be ready for hurricane season. Now, hurricanes are rated on a scale from Category 1 to Category 5. That is the wind speed scale, but obviously there are several factors that can come into play as far as how strong they are and how much of an effect they'll have on South Florida. There's storm surge, there's the wind, there's the inland flooding from rainfall, and there's also a tornado threat. All those factors come into play. Category 1 to Category 5, and of course we've only had a few Category 5 hurricanes, 4 I believe on the list now, and several of those have had a big impact on Florida. Now, when the Hurricane Center gives a forecast, they give you really two pieces, very important pieces of information. They tell you where the storm's going to be, and they tell you how strong it's going to be. And the intensity forecasts can be a little bit problematic. In the past, hurricanes will intensify rapidly at times, not really in track with what the official forecast is, but the tracks are exceptionally good, and a lot of research is still going into those intensity forecasts. Now, hurricanes in the past historically have done a lot of damage for Florida. There are some myths that we want to talk about. Number one, taping windows. I don't see a lot of this now. There used to be, when I started almost 25 years ago here, there was a lot of people still taping windows. Do not tape windows. You should be especially in the heart of the hurricane, you should be in an enclosed, safe room, windowless room. And taping windows, the only thing that does is give you an extra job to scrape off the tape at the end of the storm if the windows don't break. You want to shutter those windows, protect them, have hurricane glass, and really when the winds get very bad, you don't want to be anywhere near a window at all. So taping windows is really a waste of time. Another, and a lot of people still do this, they believe that leaving a window open equalizes the pressure from the inside and the outside and protects your windows. It does not. Keep all those windows not only closed, but protect them at the same time, because you don't want to be dealing with that at all. Third myth would be that tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane, not that bad, shouldn't be too much of an issue. It is. Take all hurricanes seriously. We can get extreme flooding and even weak tropical storms like Tropical Storm Allison. We've seen numerous storms in the last few years that have caused many deaths, and they were weak storms. From storm surge, Ike comes to mind in Galveston a few years ago. It was just I believe a Category 2 at landfall. A lot of people dismissed it, but it had a 20-foot storm surge. So that's one of those myths that we try to get people to get away from. Also, that hurricanes only affect the coastline. Well, we know that's not true because Hurricane Wilma made landfall on the west coast of Florida and had it definitely had a more significant impact here in our area, South Florida. That was that October hurricane back in 05 that caused a lot of damage and power outages for many weeks in certain areas. Also a myth I want to mention is a lot of condos along the coastline here, a lot of people believe that if they're 10, 15 floors up in a condo or some sort of high rise that you're better protected. You are not. The winds are 10% stronger every 10 floors that you go up in a building. So instead of a 100-mile-an-hour wind, you're dealing with 110 miles an hour. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but the wind damage potential increases exponentially. So you are looking at a storm that will likely cause more damage the higher up in that building that you are. Sure, you avoid the storm surge, but you're dealing with some of the other effects of the hurricane, and that wind damage obviously is a serious threat that you should consider at the same time. So we have wind damage, we have the storm surge, we have inland flooding, and the tornado threat in hurricanes, and that's what we, of course, we keep all of those together and keep an eye on all of those. Now, watches and warnings are issued. Don't put up your hurricane shutters. Typically, we tell people if a hurricane watch is issued, you have time to put up your hurricane shutters. We don't want you putting up your shutters and then having to put them down. It's a fire issue, fire threat issue, and the fire department certainly don't want that. Now, there are exceptions. Obviously, people who may be going away and evacuating well before the storm, they're going to have to put up their shutters well in advance, even before the watch is issued. But that's something to keep in mind, too, that you typically, we tell people when the watch is issued, that's the time to put up your shutters, not before and not after. It gives you lots of buffer time. All right, with all those threats, of course, we have the risk of flooding, and we have the gusty winds, and we have that storm surge threat. So all those factors come in. So this year, a lot of the forecasts that are coming out are forecasting for an above average season. There is no El Nino. El Nino typically suppresses hurricane strength and hurricane activity in the Atlantic. There's no El Nino at this time. There's warmer water in the Atlantic Ocean. It doesn't really matter if the water's warmer at the beach here in Florida. Hurricanes don't form there. They form in the central Atlantic, a lot of them, or in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. And that water is very warm this year, and that's going to be a factor that is going to have a factor on hurricanes too. All right, thanks very much, everyone. Make sure to watch WPTV for our hurricane coverage during the season. We've been around many, many years. We'll keep you safe. We'll track every storm every mile of the way. You can download our hurricane guide. It's packed with information. Watch the First Alert weather team. We have the experience. We've been here a long time. We can keep you up to date and keep your family protected at the same time.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your knowledge with us. In addition to high winds and storm surge, hurricanes threaten coastal areas with heavy rains, which could cause flooding. Here to help us determine our flood risk and how to mitigate those risks is Craig Fugate, former FEMA administrator.
Hi, I'm Craig Fugate, formerly the administrator of FEMA and the Florida Division of Emergency Management. I want to thank you for having me here at the Port St. Lucie Hurricane Expo. As we get ready for the 2021 hurricane season, I want to do a little myth busting. I've been to a lot of disasters, and unfortunately, I've seen a lot of families after disasters, and I heard this too many times. I've lived here all my life. I never knew it could be this bad. And in many cases, what they were talking about was flooding. And when we talk about hurricanes, we always talk about the wind. We talk about the evacuation zones. But one of the biggest risks that the average homeowner faces is the flooding that occurs when we're talking about feet of rain that these storms are producing. So let's start down with my list of myths. First myth is, I don't live in a flood zone. That's not true. If you live in Florida, you live in an area that's prone to flooding. The risk may be higher if you're in the special flood risk area, but it doesn't mean you don't have any risk. And what many people refer to as a flood map or a flood zone map, and that if you're not in that flood zone, I don't have a flood risk, is really a flood insurance rate map. All that map really does is identify areas that are the highest risk, where there may be requirements to have flood insurance as part of your mortgage, and you may have to build to certain standards. But just because you're not in that special flood risk area or high risk area doesn't mean you have a flood risk. It's really about the cost of the insurance. So I don't live in a flood zone. This is a busted myth. If you live in Florida and we're talking about 2-3 feet of rain from these hurricanes, which we have seen time and time again, you could flood. The second myth I hear is, well, won't my policy, my homeowner's policy, cover damage from rising water? That's why I pay all that insurance. No. Most homeowners policies, the standard homeowners policy, doesn't cover any damage from rising water, which is what flooding is called. You have to have a flood insurance policy. And the risk here is, if you don't have a flood insurance policy, even if you pay those premiums, even if you have full insurance on your home, you may not get the first dollar if the damage was due to flooding. You got to have a flood insurance policy. And that policy needs to be in effect 30 days before flood damage occurs. So it's not something you can wait till the hurricane's threatening to go by. You need to get it now. So another myth, homeowner policy covers flooding. The answer is busted. You got to have a flood insurance policy for that. There's another thing I hear. I don't know if it's so much a myth, but the cost of flood insurance. People say, well, it's too expensive. I can't afford it. And this myth, I think, goes back to talking about the flood insurance cost if you live in that high-risk area. And yes, it can be very expensive. It can be in the thousands of dollars to insure flood risk if you're in that high-risk area. But if you're not in that high-risk area, you're in what we call the low to medium risk, you are eligible for what's called a preferred risk policy. And those are more affordable. The average cost for a 2,500 square foot home with full contents and protection, it's a little under $500. $500 to provide protection due to rising water that the rest of your homeowner's policy doesn't. And I get it. $500 is not loose change for a lot of people. But I want you to think about that over the next two things we're going to talk about. And that is, if I don't have flood insurance, I don't have coverage. Well, how bad could it be? Here's what we know from FEMA's years of servicing flood claims and paying out. And they've worked out the average cost. So for that 2,500 foot square home, 1 inch of water, it's about $25,000 worth of damage. The first foot of water can go as high as $72,000. And your homeowner's policy won't cover that. Now that $500 for flood insurance starts to make more sense. And the final myth that I run into, and this is actually, to me, was heartbreaking, was the misunderstanding of the role of FEMA and disaster assistance. And too many people thinking that, well, when there's a disaster and the president declares a disaster and FEMA comes in, they're going to take care of all of this. FEMA's job was not to make you whole after a flood. That was the purpose of flood insurance. FEMA's job was to help state and local communities begin the recovery and provide limited assistance for uninsured losses. So for the average family who doesn't have flood insurance and suffers a flood loss where there has been a disaster declared by the president, the average payment is only about $7,000 to $8,000. And a lot of people get far less than that. Some people will get more, but the average is about $7,000 to $8,000. Now think about it. If that's the assistance that FEMA can provide by law, but you have a foot of water damage and you're looking at bills over $70,000, how are you going to make it work? For most of us, our homes are our biggest investments. Insuring that risk makes a lot of sense. So hopefully as we come out of this session, if nothing else, I want you to understand that you live in a flood zone. Insurance is less costly if I don't live in the high-risk area, and I need flood insurance to protect my home due to rising waters. And be financially secure and resilient. And oh, by the way, if you're not a homeowner but a renter, renter's insurance is still a good investment because most of the time, the landlords only insure the building and you're responsible for your own contents and property. So do your insurance checkup now. Call the agent, find out what's covered, find out what's not covered. And I strongly encourage you to get flood insurance as we go into this hurricane season. Thanks for having me and good luck.
Who knew a few inches of water could cost thousands of dollars in damages? Thank you, Craig, for those important facts. Gather supplies. After a hurricane, you may not have access to basic supplies for days or even weeks. Being prepared means having your own food, water, and other supplies to last for at least 72 hours. Port St. Lucie's Utility System Marketing and Digital Video Coordinator, Jennifer Tomes, wants to help you sort through common myths about your water and sewer service.
Whether you're new to Florida or a lifelong resident, we should all be on the same page when it comes to hurricane preparedness. So let's sort through some common myths about your water and sewer service. I'm Jenny Tomes, Utility Marketing Coordinator with Port St. Lucie Utility Systems. Surely you've seen the panic set in as a hurricane approaches, either on the news or in person. Grocery store shelves are emptied and the bottled water is usually the first to go. It's true. It is recommended that you should stock up and have at least 3 days worth of water on hand. But it doesn't have to be store-bought bottled water. Avoid those long lines and save money while you're at it by filling up your own containers with tap water. Our water's treated by reverse osmosis and purified with minerals, just like lots of bottled water brands on the market. Just look at the label. Emergency or not, our water continues to meet all federal and state guidelines and costs way less than bottled water. So don't stress. Tap in. Another common myth: a hurricane is coming. We should fill up the bathtub so we'll be able to flush the toilet. If a toilet won't flush for whatever reason, pouring water down it many times will stimulate a flush and make the waste go down. But is that necessary during a hurricane or if you lose power? There are 3 types of sewer systems in the city of Port St. Lucie: septic system, gravity system, and grinder or step system. So no matter which one you have, a bathtub full of water won't help or be needed if you lose power. Those on septic or gravity, you can flush. No extra water from the tub needed. The same goes for those on a grinder or step system. But keep in mind that without power, the pump will not be able to activate and pump down what's in your tank. Your tank will fill up very quickly and possibly back up into your home. So be sure to minimize your water use before, during, and after a storm. We're all in this together, so please be assured that Utility Systems follows protocols and guidelines to make sure we continue to provide our customers with outstanding water and sewer service in any kind of weather. More Utility Systems related storm preparation and recovery information can be found online at utility.cityofpsl.com.
Great tip, Jenny. I have my water containers ready to fill up as a part of my storm preparations. For additional tips on storm preparations, Sierra Campbell, Communications Director with the South Florida American Red Cross, is here to discuss basic items you may need to gather in the event of emergency.
My name is Sierra Campbell, and I'm the Regional Communications Director for the American Red Cross South Florida region. And today I'm here to show you how to prepare for hurricane season by building your own emergency preparedness kit. With hurricane season starting on June 1st, running through November 30th, it's imperative that you and your loved ones have your plan in place today in preparation. The first item you want to have in your kit is a first aid kit. This has Band-Aids, gauze, and everything that you'll need in case someone gets scraped up. You'll also want to include drinking water. So in this kit, you have packs of water that are included, but you can also purchase your own bottled water and have that ready to take with you. It's also recommended that you have a gallon-sized container that you can fill up with water as well. You should always have your important documents secured in a Ziploc baggie in case you encounter water. They will be protected. It's best to have all of these important documents in one place at home so that if you need to evacuate, you can quickly grab them and put them in your emergency kit. Having an emergency blanket on hand is always important to have in your kit for yourself, for your loved ones, your children, anyone that may need it, it's good to have on hand. And because we are still in the middle of a pandemic with COVID-19, it's crucial to have your personal preparedness equipment included in your kit. These items include masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, and any kind of disinfectant supplies. And during an emergency like a hurricane, it's extremely important to keep up with your local news, to know what's expected, to know what's coming in case you need to evacuate. And one of these ways that you can do that is by having a hand crank radio in your kit. This one also serves as a flashlight, but it's good to have a separate flashlight in your kit as well with some backup batteries. Also make sure you have a roll of duct tape included in your kit. This is helpful just in case you encounter an item that breaks or anything that you need to help secure. Duct tape can come in handy. Make sure you have your phones, tablets, computers, whatever you need to take with you. And by visiting redcross.org/store, you can get your own emergency preparedness kit just like this one to ensure you're ready for a disaster. In an emergency, your pets will be even more dependent on you for their safety and well-being. Your family's disaster plans must include your furry family members too. If it's not safe for you to stay in your home during an emergency, it's not safe for them either. And make sure that you include supplies for your pet in your emergency kit, or assemble a separate emergency kit for your pet. Make sure you have an evacuation plan for you and your pets. Many hotels and shelters do not accept animal guests other than service animals. If you are assembling a separate pet emergency kit, make sure you're including items such as sturdy leashes, harnesses, or carriers to transport pets safely and ensure that they can't escape. Make sure you have food, drinking water, bowls, a cat litter pan, and a manual can opener if your pet eats canned food. Current photos of you with your pets in case they get lost. Since many pets look alike, this will help eliminate mistaken identity and confusion. The best way to protect your household from the effects of a disaster is to have a disaster plan. If you are a pet owner, that plan must include your pets. Being prepared can save their lives. You wouldn't want to be left behind in the middle of a disaster, and neither does your pet.
Thank you, Sierra. That was a great reminder that pets are family too. So don't forget about your furry friends. Strengthen your home. Flying debris or downed trees and power lines can make severe winds a threat to lives, property, and utilities. While you can't prevent severe winds, there's a simple, low-cost way to secure your property to minimize damage. Summer Burdock, Port St. Lucie's Neighborhood Service Manager, is here to share a few tips on how to protect your home from severe winds.
With hurricane season comes a sense of urgency to prepare. When it comes to storm preparation, there's one thing that's easy to overlook: what to do with your trash and recycling. Well, to make the prep work a little easier, we've put together these handy tips to help get you and the community ready in case a storm impacts our area. But first, one of the biggest myths I'd like to debunk is the best time to trim trees is when our area is under a hurricane watch or warning. In fact, that is one of the worst times to trim trees. The yard waste generated from your trimming may not be able to be picked up before the storm, and you could be creating dangerous projectiles. No one wants flying yard debris during a hurricane, so planning ahead can reduce the amount of loose debris and protect your property at the same time. Now, back to our storm preparation tips. Before a hurricane, one of the most important things you can do for your home is to secure all loose items in case there are high winds. That means stopping all outdoor maintenance and tree trimming activities when there is a named storm and the projected path puts the city of PSL near or into the cone of uncertainty. Securing all loose items, such as tree limbs, branches, wood planks, and building materials. It's important to place these things where they cannot become flying projectiles. Storing trash and recycling containers in the garage, a shed, or an enclosed and secure location to prevent another source of potential projectiles. Keep in mind that Waste Pro will continue to collect household trash and recycling materials according to designated schedules until a hurricane warning is issued for the area. After the storm, if we are impacted by storm force winds or greater, once a storm has passed and the all clear has been given, there are a number of things you can do to ensure the smooth resumption of your solid waste collection services. Be sure to separate regular household waste from storm debris. Everyday items like garbage, recyclables, and other household trash should be disposed of as you normally would, while storm debris, including tree limbs, damaged fencing, and appliances, just to name a few, should be placed curbside in separate piles. Separating these items properly will allow Waste Pro to collect your trash quickly and safely. If FEMA is called in, separating household trash from disaster debris will allow other solid waste contractors to collect storm debris in accordance with arrangements by the City of PSL. Waste Pro will restart curbside trash and recycling collection of normal household waste as soon as it's safe to do so. Lastly, check for the latest updates on storm recovery within your community by visiting the City of PSL's social media outlets or contacting WastePro at 772-595-9390. As a community partner, we work diligently to help you prepare for approaching hurricanes and, once the storm passes, get things up and running and back to normal as soon as possible. As community members, we also proudly support local recovery efforts, ensuring affected communities can thrive again. Thank you for assisting in keeping our city beautiful. And don't forget, all of your efforts to be storm ready will not go to waste.
Summer, it's very important to secure objects outside the home, and mitigation measures really need to be tailored to your individual home. If you're thinking about trimming your trees to reduce falling limbs, look up. And note the location of power lines before you begin. FP&L wants to share this important storm safety message. Help your neighbors. Many people, especially senior citizens, rely on the assistance of their neighbors before and after hurricanes. You can help your neighbors collect important supplies they need before a storm. Also, you can assist them with evacuating if ordered to do so. Remember to check on them after a storm passes too. Staying informed is also a major part of being prepared. If you want alerts about emergencies in your area, including major road closures, boil water notices, flooding, and storm events, sign up for Alert St. Lucie at stlucieco.gov/alert to receive message via email, phone call, or text. For additional localized information on what to do before, during, and after disaster, visit cityofpsl.com/hurricane. If you have any questions that we did not cover today, please email the city's Emergency Management Department at pslem@cityofpsl.com. Thank you to our panel of experts for sharing their hurricane preparedness tips, and thank you for joining us.